Hey everyone, it's Joy here for Honeybee Stamps. Today I have created a Bohemian wedding card using the Painted Blooms stamp and coordinating die. So I'm going to start by stamping a ton of these leaves because I want to make a wreath, and then some of these flowers. I went online to look at some Bohemian color schemes and just really fell in love with the one that I'm going to be sharing here today. I just really had fun kind of thinking outside of the box for a wedding card because they're always just, white or white and black or a soft pink, they're absolutely gorgeous. But, the Bohemian style is so pretty, and I thought that would be fun. That would be really a fun idea. So that's what we're going to do here today. So in my MISTI, I have some Neenah Classic Crest Solar White cardstock. I have a bunch of different inks that I'm going to use for my color scheme. This first one is a Distress Oxide ink. This is Bundled Sage. So for these two larger leaf sections, and I'm going to stamp these multiple times, I'm using the Bundled Sage ink for that. For the other smaller leaf pieces, I'm going to be using Simon Says Stamp Positively Saturated inks in Sage. So I'm using two sages, but they're going to look a little bit different from each other, but that's what I want. I want it to stand out differently. When I found this color scheme, it was literally called Sage and Brown, but it had like apricots and a little bit of oranges and kind of this brownish red. So I got as close as I could with all of my inks that I was searching for through my stash. So I think I got pretty close. So I have my first stampings of leaves here, and I'm also going to stamp my flowers, but those bigger leaves especially, I ended up stamping 6 of those total, because I needed quite a few to create this wreath. I'm also using the Circlescapes Shaker Frames die. That's what's going to help me to create the shaker part of this wreath. So yes, it is a shaker wedding card. Who knew that could be a thing? But it totally can. And I really am in love with this card. I think it is so soft and pretty. And like, if I was a Bohemian bride, I would totally want this card. Okay, so I've stamped a ton. Now I'm going to start stamping my flowers. So I'm using Distress Oxide ink in Aged Mahogany. That was kind of like that reddish brown. The color scheme that I was looking at was a tad bit more on the brown side, but this totally worked. Then I am going to use 2 colors of apricot, one from Catherine Pooler and then one from Lawn Fawn, some apricot inks. I'm only sharing these colors with you because it took me a minute to get the color scheme. So that's the only reason why I'm actually sharing the names of the colors with you right now, because usually you can find what you want in your stash, but this was pretty particular. And I'm also going to be using apricot from Catherine Pooler. So that was that color there. And you can see how gorgeous these flowers are. I'm so in love. The other dark one on the left is the Ginger from Catherine Pooler. And then this very last one that I'm inking up is the Lawn Fawn Apricot. I am going to use the coordinating dies to die cut out all of these. And it did take a minute, but it's so worth it. Then I'm going to stamp the little centers of the flowers with the Distress Oxide ink in Aged Mahogany. And I'm just going to use an acrylic block to do it because it's fast. And I'll be honest, I wasn't even trying to match any of these to any of the flowers. I was just putting them in the center because you can kind of get away with that because they don't like fit perfectly. So it didn't matter to me. I just used all the different centers. Okay, so here is that Circlescapes Shaker Frames die. I have some really light craft cardstock. I'm going to take the largest frame and the largest background, and I just was adding some of my leaves here because I wanted to make sure that this was going to be big enough and make sure it wasn't too big because there is 3 sizes of frames in this die. So I'm going to cut out the back piece and the frame piece, tape that down, and run that through my die cut machine. I'm also going to take the solid back piece and die cut a piece of acetate. I have a piece of darker craft cardstock and the Barnwood background stamp. I love this stamp. I am inking it and stamping it with Hero Arts Unicorn ink. And isn't that gorgeous? So here is the die cutting of the acetate. It just has this little sheet behind it so you can actually see your acetate and you don't lose it. So I just die cut through that. And this is what we're going to use for the front of our shaker. So here's the frame. I'm going to add a tiny bit of liquid glue to the frame. Be careful not to overdo the liquid glue because it will squish out onto your acetate, and you just don't want that drama in your life. Then I want to add my foam tape. Depending on what you're going to be putting in your shaker, you're really going to want, I would say, unless it's like really flat glitter, you need 2 layers of foam tape. Like, you know, the normal size, not like the low profile foam tape. So I'm trimming down my foam tape. I am taking the release paper off, which makes it a cinch to follow around and wrap it around this circle frame. So I'm going to put my first layer down, and then I can trim down, remove the release paper, and add my second layer directly on top. Also, when you're making a shaker, make sure all of your adhesive is butting up to the next one, because you don't want all of your fun little shaker bits to shake right out of your shaker. That would not be fun. So I have both of my layers there. Now I am using something that I did not realize Honeybee Stamps no longer has. This is the Autumn Afternoon sequence, and I was just picking out the lighter colors that matched my images. But what I did for you guys in the description below here on YouTube is I linked some other options from Honeybee Stamps that would totally work to fill your sequence. So I apologize. I should have looked beforehand, and I did not. So I'm just picking out my little pieces, filling that up, and then I'm going to take the back piece that we already have die cut and adhere that right to the back, and I'm going to make sure I press down really good, and now we have our shaker and the base to our frame. So I laid out my pieces just to kind of get a quick idea of where the leaves need to be. So I'm just going to use a little bit of liquid glue and adhere this down. What I liked about this is I liked the shape and the direction that these leaves are going in. And so they're a little bit wonky, but once I was done with this, everything is nice and full. So you'll definitely want to see how that turns out. So stick around for that. Once I have laid the other 2 on top of the first, or the other 3 on top of the first 3, now I can take those darker pieces and start tucking them in and kind of filling in the gaps where it's a little sparse on one side or whatever. But you don't have to do that because it's natural. So even if it's a little bit wonky, like that's just how nature is. But I think it turned out fantastic. So I'm just using a little bit of liquid glue, but look at how full this is getting, tucking all of these little pieces in. I just love how it turned out. Then I can add the flowers. I will add, with the larger flowers, some foam tape behind those, just to make them pop a little bit more. But I like to lay out my images first to really kind of get an idea, and I leave that in sometimes to share with you guys kind of how my process works. So, but super, super simple, and look at how pretty this is. And you have the shaker bits behind it. Like, I love it. I feel like this is such a playful and kind of relaxed card, which I feel like Bohemian style is that to some degree, just really relaxed, really laid back. And I think people that kind of embrace that are just super easygoing. So that was my whole idea for this card, the whole feeling from it. So now I'm going to tuck in all those little flowers, and look at how pretty they look. This color scheme is so gorgeous. Okay, now for the sentiment. I am using the Perfect Day stamp set and coordinating die, and I'm going to stamp it, the one that says "Here Comes the Bride." I tried it in the first apricot ink, but then it was a little too dark, a little too orange, so I used the second one, which is the one from Lawn Fawn, and it was a little bit lighter, and it was perfect. I even did think, should I do gold embossing powder? But it felt a little too formal for this card, so I just did colored ink, which is not something I usually tend to do, but I love how it turned out. Of course, there is coordinating dies for these sentiments, because you know Honeybee Stamps is awesome like that, so I'm going to use that coordinating die, tape that in place, and then just run that through my die cut machine. Then we can get this card to put together. So I have some foam tape behind the sentiments. Now look at that wreath on that barnwood background card panel. Look at how pretty that is. It is so, I love how it turned out. It is so gorgeous to me. I'm going to pop this sentiment right in the center over that acetate, which is going to kind of fill up that space just a little bit. But look at how pretty that is, and you can see all of the shaker bits behind it. Now, I also decided that I wanted some of those shaker bits on the front, because when it's sitting up or standing up, you still get a little bit of that sequence on there. So I centered that in my card panel. I will add a card base behind this, and I just picked out some of the lighter colors again and added that to the front of the card with a little bit of liquid glue. And look at how pretty this is. I did not decide to add sequins on the flowers because I just felt like that would have been too much. But this, I love how this turned out. I think this would be such a pretty card to give to someone who's having a bohemian style wedding. I don't know why I said it twice, but anyways. Okay guys, thank you so very much for stopping by and watching. I hope that you feel inspired, and I hope that you enjoyed this project. I will be back soon with another video. Bye.